Hey, I'm Bree, and this is my sister Jules. I'm an English teacher.
And I have tummy issues.
Together, we drink wine as we unpack the brilliant writing of the hit 90s sitcom Boy Meets World. Cheers! What are we drinking?
We are drinking Porter and Plot Cabernet Sauvignon, one of my faves.
Do it for the plot.
This is a full-bodied red wine from Mendocino County, California.
Oh my God, Mendocino! I've been there. It's beautiful.
You have? What's it like?
It's really pretty, and I believe it's where they filmed Murder, She Wrote.
I think that's where I want to end up. I just want to be retired, wearing long dresses, like staring outside at the water, at the ships, and I might go into town and pick up some essential oils, and then I'll go get a lobster roll, and then I'll get some Cabernet Sauvignon on the way back.
Would it be
just
porter
have a nice
and
little afternoon. Anyway, let's try this wine.
Tell me about it as I take a sip.
That is a red wine.
Oh, I like this.
I like this too. What are you getting?
It smells like my humidifier. Like that really... Sorry. It smells like moisture. If that makes sense. Moisture has a smell, y'all. It does. And it smells like that.
It smells like mold.
Actually, kind of. But like a very clean... You know that like fresh smell that you get when you like open a new wheel of brie? And you get like a whiff of like cold dampness.
Yes.
That's what I smell. That's what I taste. I love it. I'm into it. It's very like refreshing and cooling, and like it makes me want to take deep breaths.
Yeah. I could easily drink a whole bottle of this.
Yeah.
The flavor profile is red plum, black cherry, and strawberry. And from the herbal, earthy side, there are dried herbs, a tomato leaf, which is interesting, subtle dried earth, an oaky afterbirth, if you will. Hints of cocoa, vanilla, and licorice.
I don't know about those. I don't know if I'm going deeper.
Refined tannins with a velvety mouthfeel. I'm definitely like the velvety mouthfeel feels appropriate.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's so smooth. There's no like bite. There's no moment where you're like too much alcohol or spicy or like sour. Like there's no. It's just like smooth.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna wake up with a headache. Yeah, in fact, I will wake up feeling smarter.
Okay, let's get into it. This week, we watched Season 2, Episode 3. Title of the episode, Notorious. Synopsis, Cory learns that it's hard to do the right thing. It aired on October 7th, 1994. And still no Jules. You still don't exist yet. Written by Jeff C. Sherman. He wrote a total of 14 episodes, and he was a writer and a producer. He wrote On the Fence in season 1, which was episode 2, which was the one that I critiqued. I remember I critiqued that one a lot because it made references to Huckleberry Finn, but it didn't do it in like a very good way, in my opinion. And then he also wrote The Fugitive, which was like one of our favorite episodes.
And it's relevant to this episode.
Oh, yeah, there are a lot of similarities.
Yeah, he even mentions it. Shawn mentions that episode.
You're so right. Yeah, when he blew up that mailbox, he says that in this episode. Directed by David Trainer, as always. Viewers, 16.2 million. We lost about 3 million since the last episode. What were your first impressions?
My first impressions were... I was really mad at Shawn this episode. I feel like he was not being a good friend for an episode that was all about protecting your friends.
Yeah, I don't know if it was all about protecting your friends, in my opinion. I felt like my first impression is a critique, and it was like, I felt like this episode was a little lost in its message. Like, it kept talking about wanting to be special. The word special comes up like at least 3 times in the episode. And I was like, okay, so they're really trying to make a point here about maybe like the teenage need to be special. But then I felt like there was a lost opportunity to make it more about first impressions, right? Because like Feeny is new to the school, Cory's new to the school, Shawn's new to the school, Turner's new to the school. And like they're all trying to establish their reputation at this school. And like in doing so, they're not acknowledging that like they might be infringing on someone else's chance to make their first impression, right? And like at what cost do you kind of establish your reputation? Is that, you know, like basically they need to grow up and humanize Feeny and realize that he's a person too who's also trying to establish his reputation. And yeah. So that was interesting to me, and I felt like it was muddied up by like, I just want to be special. And then I always just get like weirded out when there's a lot of like sexualization of women and girls and a lot of like making them into kind of one-dimensional figures. But this show is interesting because it kind of like rides that line for me a little bit where I'm like, I mean, the girls are not stupid and they're definitely interesting and they seem to have like their own stories, but they are a little bit one-dimensional, but not any more so than like Eric kind of can be too. And like, so I'm like, I don't know. So the first scene, speaking of all this, the sexualization and the experimentation, we're in like the hallway and Shawn and Cory are heading to kind of a new space in the school. It's not exactly a classroom. It ends up being like the room where the school newspaper is typed up and made. And they're sort of like listening for where Eric is, and all they hear is a girl going, "Oh, yes, Eric, that feels so good. Don't stop." And Cory really creepily, instead of going, which is like what he would have done last season, goes, "Okay, we found my brother," and like starts to kind of open the door with this like smile on his face, like, yeah, we're gonna see what he's doing. And I was like, so much is wrong with this.
Yeah, that made me uncomfortable. I had to like just think like, oh, they're probably just trying to make a funny nod to the last episode, because in the last episode he walks in on his brother making out with somebody. So her being like, "Don't stop," was like him being like, "Oh, here we go, about to walk in on my brother again."
Yeah, I get that. You're right. It wasn't like, because we had that in the last episode. Yeah, I wonder if like what I just said, by the way, about like needing to up it is like happening, right? Because the last episode really did explore sex and sexuality, and then like now they're like, all right, we got to kind of keep doing that, right? And because that's what, interesting. So her name is Molly. So Cory opens the door to the room where the newspapers are made, and Molly is sitting in a chair typing up the latest issue of the school newspaper, and she's typing up a personality profile of Feeny. So the front page of the paper is basically going to be that they have a new principal and his name is Feeny. And Molly, what I love about her character, though, I will say, is that she's a journalist or an aspiring journalist, and so she uses beautiful vocabulary words. She has a great lexicon. And so she says, the personality profile of our new principal is superlative. And as she's sitting in the chair saying this, typing away, Eric is behind her with his hands on her shoulders, giving her a shoulder rub, a massage, essentially, which is why she was saying, yes, Eric, that feels good. Don't stop. And it's revealed that like Eric's been giving her some like pointers, because he says, well, the man lives next door. So glad I could give some help. So he's been helping her out with the paper since he knows Feeny so well. We get like the first taste of this like story that Eric is involved in, or like we get the first taste of Eric's story in this episode when he says, Molly, I'm more than just a pair of strong masculine hands. So Eric's journey in this episode is dealing with not erasing his entire personality in order to just like be whatever it needs to be to get a girl's attention, or to have her like remain interested in him. Which, does this remind you of what we were talking about last episode?
Absolutely. I figured that this episode was more of the same.
Yeah. So as Cory is sort of constantly being tested with, who are you? Like, as we keep seeing Cory reiterate who he is to others and to himself. We see Eric consistently struggle with finding himself. Cory gets bombarded with challenges, but at the end of every episode comes back to himself, comes back to his like solid personality, he's like a boulder in the ocean and the waves keep hitting him and he remains steady and static. And then his brother is the ocean. Like he's just changing up for whoever, like he has no sense of who he is.
Yeah.
And that's a good foil for Cory. Like it's going to keep showing us that Cory really is, in my opinion, this admirable character that we love because, as we said, it's kind of in our human nature to admire people who know who they are and who are confident in who they are. Molly and Eric leave the room and the screen still has the front page of the paper on it, and Cory and Shawn have fun with changing the F in Feeny's name because the headline is like new principal is Feeny, and then they start changing the F to all these different letters of the alphabet and they land on a W, so they change it to new principal is Weenie. Shawn's the one who actually typed the letter, and then Shawn wants to like leave it that way, and that's when Cory's like wait a minute, and Shawn goes power, ultimate power, and Cory's like yeah, but we would never, would we? And Shawn goes, power. We'd be notorious. We would be legends. And Cory's like, what do you mean? And Shawn's like, well, what are we now? And Cory's like, we are lowly 7th grade sewer scum who name rats after ourselves to feel important. Because they have rats in cages. That's like a homework assignment for them because they are studying natural selection, which I was like, wow, how many times can they learn about natural selection? I feel like that's all they learn about. And Shawn's like, well, how do you feel about that, about being lowly sewer scum? And Cory's like, better than the guys with no rats. And Shawn's like, hey, Cory, wouldn't you rather be something special? And that's when we get that first use of the word special. And then he goes, or would you rather be us? And Cory's like, Shawn, power like that in the wrong hands, it's dangerous. Maybe I overanalyzed that, but I was like, is he saying that their hands are the wrong hands? Like, it's a weird thing to say about yourself. You know, if you're talking about like another person having power, you could be like, oh, power in the wrong hands, not good. But it's odd for a person to say that they themselves are the wrong hands for the power, you know? So Cory urges them to go. Shawn's like, all right, yeah, wrong hands. And then the scene changes and we're in the hallway and everybody's walking around with the school newspaper, which is one of my favorite corny, campy things about TV shows is like whenever a main character writes a newspaper article, suddenly
everybody's reading that article. They're like, did you see that story on page 3? No, nobody reads the newspaper.
That scene in Elf is my favorite. Like when a main character's on the news, suddenly everyone has the news on their TVs.
You can't help but just go with it in Elf. Like all the bars are watching the news. That little girl in her room. Yeah. What are you doing watching the news on Christmas Eve in your bed? Like what? Nobody was celebrating Christmas anywhere. They were just like in their kitchen or a living room or at the bar. God, I love that movie so much.
So everyone's reading the newspaper. Everybody's laughing. And Harley's got the newspaper open because, again, Harley reads the school newspaper. He's been in the school for 10 years, can't graduate, bullies everyone, but takes the time to really catch up on the John Adams High news. And he's with his cronies, Joey the Rat and Frankie, and he just goes, hey, look at this. His name's Feeny. They wrote Weenie. I'm laughing. You laughing? And Joey's like, oh yeah, I was just thinking of laughing. I would have been laughing already, but I was too busy listening to you, Harley. But I think I'm ready now. And then Harley's like, the guy who could cook up something like that, now that's a guy I'd like to have hanging with me. This... Again, the writing was so contrived and bad, and I know it's supposed to be funny. It's like sometimes I think of this show more as a cartoon than like a live action, but it was this moment, and then it was also the moment. Actually, it's coming up, so I'll get to it. So Frankie's like, he'd be a great addition to our organization. And Joey's like, well, yeah, he could stand right here. And Harley's like, I'm thinking he could stand right where you're standing. And Frankie's like, well, then where would Joey stand? Oh. And then Joey's like, am I going for a ride? And then Shawn comes in and interrupts and basically goes, excuse me, Harley, sir, about that guy you wanted to meet. And he's trying to basically say, like, I'm your man. I could replace him. Yeah. And then Harley gets mad because he's eavesdropping. And Joey's delivery of this line is so good. I'm going to totally butcher it. But he goes, yeah, because Harley's got a whole locker full of ears from guys who've done the same thing. The glasses hang crooked now because they got no ears. And Cory asks Shawn, sorry, this is another line that I left. He's holding the newspaper and he goes, Shawn, are you farther gone than I ever could have imagined? It reminded me of Minkus going, have you taken leave of your senses? Wait, where's Minkus?
I know. I was gonna bring that up. It's been 3 episodes and no Minkus. I don't like it.
What are we doing?
Yeah, what are we doing?
Mink. Dude, you know they had to ask him back. There's no way they didn't ask him. So, like, is he just like...
I see him again. I just don't know when. And I need more Minkus. I need it. Also, is it grammatically correct to say farther in that sentence?
No, you're right. It should be further. So... Cory has just asked, are you farther gone than I could have imagined? And Shawn goes, no, I'm not gone. I've arrived. I am known. I rule this school. My fame here will live forever. Cory's like, except nobody knows you did this. Shawn's like, what, you think that bothers me? I know I did it. That's good enough for me. And then this was another line where I was like, the writing, man, like it's so cheesy. And I get that it's maybe supposed to be, but I felt like the actors weren't aware that it was supposed to be cheesy. So it was like a little bit weird. Just some random girl walks by, and in all seriousness, as far as I can tell, we're supposed to take it as seriousness. She goes, I wonder who did this. If it was my boyfriend, I would do anything for him. I literally went... like out loud
same.
When I
you bring up a good point in that, like, it's cheesy, and if the actors played it off as cheesy, it wouldn't have been so uncomfortable.
Right? I was like, okay, I guess I'll accept that reality. And Shawn goes, oh, it's killing me. Because you do realize in this one scene, Shawn had 2 situations where if he were to reveal that he did it, he would A, become Harley's crony, which is what he's been trying to do since the beginning of the year, and B, have a girlfriend, which is like also clearly what he's trying to do, even though he was making out with someone in a locker 5 seconds ago.
What happened to her?
What happened to her? This is what I mean about this show. It's hard to pin it down, but it's like things like that just kind of normalize the women and the girls being props, interchangeable sex objects.
Yeah.
You know,
because I feel like it's super unrealistic for 7th graders to just like make out with lots of people and then you're like, okay, bye. Right. At least in my experience, if you're like kissing somebody, like you're going steady for a little bit.
Right? So scene change. We're in the classroom and Turner's talking about the Scarlet Letter. Pew, 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 pew. Did you have to read that in high school?
No, not in my class. We talked about it in season 1, but I didn't read a lot of like the classic books that everybody had to read. I read a lot of like lesser known, more contemporary works. So yeah, I never read it, but I definitely know what it's about. And I definitely did a quick Cliff Notes search just so I could prep myself for today.
Test, tell me what it's about. Go.
So it's about, the setting is in like 1600s Boston, I think, in Puritan society. The main character is a woman named Hester, I think, and she has a baby outside of her marriage. And spoilers, the baby is by a minister. The husband spends most of the book consumed with this idea of revenge and like wants to figure out who did it and is suspicious of this minister. And all the while, Hester is labeled as an adulterer, right? We are slut shaming her because it's a 1600s Puritan and you have to be pure. And she was impure. So she had to wear Scarlet A on her publicly to show everybody that she was impure. And so she was ridiculed in society for that. Her daughter that she had, her name is Pearl, I think was a little bit more outspoken. And that's it. That's all I have.
Good job. That was excellent.
Yay.
Yeah. What people don't realize about that book is that it was written in like 1850 something, but the writer was trying to write about a time that was like 200 years before. And Hawthorne, the writer, his like one of his ancestors was actually like the main Judge Hathorne, who was like the guy in the Salem witch trials who sent a lot of women to the stake to be burnt. I remember reading that along with The Crucible. I feel like we did The Crucible and The Scarlet Letter kind of at the same time, like one after the other, and just like kind of living in that Puritan society for a really long time and like getting immersed in it. Anyway, great summary of the book. Hester is kind of great. Like she becomes such a charitable person who is constantly helping people, helping the sick. She has like amazing seamstress skills. Her A starts to become an A that represents like able for people. She kind of starts to like change her own narrative. I like to think about it being about the way that guilt and shame can kind of manifest in two different ways in a person, right? So for her guilt and shame that she feels for having done what she did, she kind of turns it into power. And she decides, you know what? I did something bad, something that my society considers bad, and therefore something that I consider bad. And therefore I am going to do good. I'm going to help people. And then Dimsdale, which is the name of the priest that impregnated her, he kind of just completely unravels. He's constantly preaching about sin, and it's sort of his way of trying to cope with what he did. And he like tiptoes on the edge of confessing, but then he never actually does. He just kind of says to the people, I know what it means to sin. I'm a sinner too. And like, so he's like really good at understanding people and he really connects with them, but then they just love him even more. And they think he's so good because he's like a priest who's admitting that he sins. And they're just like, oh, what a good guy.
Relatable.
Like, yeah. And that further makes him spiral because he's just like, no, like I'm a terrible person and I want, like, he can't handle the guilt basically. And he, in the privacy of his home, he actually like whips himself and hurts himself and he's just like beating himself up. He just gets sick, like out of nowhere. He just like has this random disease.
Sick with guilt.
Literally sick with guilt. Exactly. And then at one point there's just this burnt letter A in his chest. And like, we're not really sure if he did it himself. There are like mystical elements of the book. So you're like, oh, did like God give him that? Like you kind of don't know. But at the end of the day, like he dies. Like he eventually dies at the end of the book. So he just like unravels. But then Hester kind of thrives. Like, I'll stop there for now. But I like to think of it as guilt and the power of guilt and what it does to a person and how a person becomes who they are based on a bad thing that they did or as a result of a bad thing they did.
Right. You let it eat you alive or you own it and grow from it.
Exactly.
It's like the two sides of that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
It feels like very progressive writing for 1850.
It really was, which is one of the reasons it's obviously a classic. It's also fascinating to explore through a lens of what was the MO of the author. Is it a conservative book? Is it a liberal book? Because it does kind of critique religion and Puritans. But at the same time, there is kind of a spiritual message about there seems to be like a presence of God in the book. There's like a meteor that flashes across the sky during a meeting between Hester and Dimsdale that rates the letter A. You know, the A being burned into his heart, for example, you could interpret it as like something that God gave him. If you're a very religious person, you could have one perspective on it. If you're an atheist, you could have another perspective on it. So the writing is absolutely unbelievably beautiful. And it's one of those books where I'm like, oh my God, people used to write like this and we don't write like this anymore. We used to be so literate and now we're just like losing it and it's sad. So Turner says, okay, the Scarlet Letter. Hester Prynne has a red letter A on her dress. Now everybody knows what the A stands for, right?
Boring.
And Turner says, hey, everybody, don't laugh at Matthews, okay? He's never seen an A before. That was a good one.
That was a good one.
Okay, the buzz is all over the Massachusetts colony that Hester has taken the pure out of Puritan. It's scandal, it's gossip. It could have come right out of today's headlines. Even though it'd be a really boring story if she like had sex with another guy because she thought her husband was dead. Feeny walks in and goes, ahem. And Turner's like, Mr. Feeny, good morning. And Feeny goes, actually, Mr. Turner, I've had better. You see, I've been forced on this particular morning to go from room to room asking anyone with information about this little journalistic prank, and he holds up the paper with the headline, New Principal is Weenie, to come forward. I'll go a lot easier on the perpetrator if he or she or they voluntarily confess. And at first I was like, yay! And then I was like, oh, because I realized he...
plural.
Yeah.
No, we're going to take it as he is an ally.
Yep. And then he goes, no, very well. I will now return you to your lecture on... And then he looks at the board and he just sees a big letter A on the board and he goes, the letter A. Keep up the good work. Also, we can cut this, but this scene where Feeny walks in and is like holding the paper and is like, shame! It reminded me of when Mr. Farrell, Sacred Heart principal. Yep.
I was thinking the same thing.
Right?
I was thinking the same thing. And I know that happened to your class. It didn't happen to mine, but I remember you telling me this, and it was like everybody was talking about it.
Yep.
To the point where like watching this scene brought me back to that, feeling like I was there when it happened.
Oh my God, I love that. That's a memory for you because it's clearly, obviously, a memory for me.
This is what you are.
Okay, we have to tell the story really quick. I had a very checked out 6th grade math teacher who forgot that she wasn't teaching us. She had a test that she would give every year, same time, and she kind of like forgot that she needed to teach us the material. It was almost like she in her mind was like, I taught them this, right? So she gave us this test and we took it and we were like freaking out because we didn't know anything. But she was like, no, like don't worry, don't worry.
Clear, you guys like all failed the test.
We all failed it. I got a 56 on it.
Which is unheard of. Like, Brie doesn't get a 56. She gets all A's. Like, everybody that's a straight A student failed the test. Like, this is how you know she did not teach the material.
So, we had this brilliant kid in our class, Omar, I'll never forget him, that was so mature, wise beyond his years. And he basically wrote up a petition, which I'd never even heard of. So, he had us all sign this petition that basically said, like, we demand a retest. And I was the John Hancock. I was the first person to sign it. My name was big at the top and it was all flowery. Someone slipped it in her mailbox, which the way our school was, the mailboxes were like right outside the school classroom door. And this I heard, I wasn't in the class where this happened, but apparently she was teaching math to the other class. And one boy in the class just went, check your mailbox. And she was like, what was that? And then she went out and she took out the petition. And apparently she read it in front of the class, looked up at the class, then crumpled it up, threw it on the ground. They had walkie-talkies back then to communicate with the principal. Contacted him. Yeah. And it was really dramatic. She left the classroom. She was crying. And I remember we were in like, I think it was science class. And I was sitting there and all of a sudden, Mr. Farrell, and you have to know this guy. He was such a character of a man. He was definitely gay and he was super theatrical. And he had this deep, deep, booming voice. And he just moved with intention. And he was very tall and lanky. And he kind of just very charismatic. And he made quite a spectacle of this. And he was holding a paper mache pig that the kindergarten had made. Imagine the size of a balloon, right, blown up, a regular balloon. And then little egg carton feet. And it was all painted pink. And he had it in one hand and he was holding it with the tips of his fingers, had his other arm behind his back. And he walks in like a waiter holding this pig. And he strolls over to the front of the room and he sort of turns on his heels to us and he looks at us all, just stares us in the eyes, head swiveling slowly across the room. And he just goes, pigs! This is what you are. Pigs! And then he launches into a harangue and he just basically goes off on us about how horrible it was that we organized and signed a petition to have a retest. That was a totally fair thing to do and very nonviolent and actually a really brilliant thing to do.
Do you think you'll ever get closure on that?
I don't think I will.
No. Hopefully the rest of your class like looks back on that and says that was a really awesome thing that we did. And like shame on the school for not seeing that.
this authoritarian approach to school, this like, you are submissive, empty vessel students who sit and shut up and listen and learn, and you don't challenge the status quo, and right, like, and then we are in charge and everything we say goes and everything we say is right because we're the teachers. And that's the way school was for a really long time. I think we've gone a little far in the opposite direction. It's a lot of like, students always right, parents always right going on, and teachers always wrong, which not good either.
Bump things back into balance.
We got to get back in balance, exactly. But Feeny is essentially zero tolerance right now with this headline, right? He's coming in going, I must get to the bottom of who this is. He's not having like a light sense of humor about it, which in my personal opinion, I think would probably be the most effective way to go about this. If he could kind of laugh about it himself, it would actually disarm, in the same way that, you know, we talked about the best way to disarm bullies is to be able to laugh at yourself or to kind of not care, right? So Feeny caring is actually making it laughable.
Yeah, I hear that, but I think his response makes sense. I think that's his best strategy given his position. It's different because he's not susceptible to bullies. Like, he's not going to be influenced in that way. He can't brush something like that off, because if he did, people will realize, oh, I can get away with this and do more, and then undermine authority. Undermining authority will become the norm.
Right.
And he can't have that.
I guess I'm just like very much in a school where everyone in a position of quote unquote authority is actually more of a servant in a therapeutic sense to the students. We're here to facilitate your learning, but you're the ones in power, and we're going to kind of encourage you to use that power responsibly. But at the end of the day, like, we want you to feel like this is your school, which is beautiful. So we get a scene change. Dad and Eric are talking in the kitchen. Eric basically says that Molly dumped him because of what happened with the paper.
We get my word of the day here.
I know what it is already, and I'm like, it doesn't happen. Maybe it does happen in this scene. Tell me.
Which of the two words? Anyway, sorry, get to it, and I'll say it.
After this scene, Eric and Jason are in the hallway, and Molly walks by and calls Eric a vermicular miscreant.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it?
Miscreant was my
word. Oh, miscreant.
Yes.
Not vermicular?
Vermicular, yes, that was a contender, but miscreant is what I went with because it's only one word of the day and I had to choose one.
I am shocked that you didn't choose vermicular. So my word was vermicular.
Oh, great. That's perfect. Let's talk about vermicular miscreant.
Do you know what vermicular means?
Yeah, it's like worm-like.
Yeah.
Do you see how I said that? Like I already knew what it meant and I didn't just look it up.
Well, vermicelli is like worm noodle, like anything that's shaped like that.
Vermicelli, interesting. Vermin, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. What is a miscreant?
It's usually when somebody's referred to as a miscreant, they're usually like a criminal or something like that. But I wanted to dig deeper into it. From Old French, miscreant meant unbelieving or heretical, and then in medieval Latin, M-I-S, it translates to wrongly, and then credere is to believe. So another word for unbelieving. So I found that a really interesting way to kind of suggest that, like, if you're a non-believer, a heretic, like that automatically makes you a criminal for like going against society's norms, which also goes back to like the Puritan culture of like, you have to like follow the norms of our society, otherwise you will be labeled with an A, which is why that's my word of the day.
Amazing. Wow. Excellent. A+. So we get the scene. Also, what we skipped by moving on to our word of the day was Morgan being probably the most annoying she's ever been.
Loud does not equal funny. Come on.
Oh my God. And I watched this episode twice because I needed to take notes on the second round. And I literally was like, oh, like the second time it was grating on my ears and I turned the volume down because I was like, oh, this scene.
It was like, I also was like so irritated too. And I was looking at the actors around her to see if I could like see their real self in there for a little bit. And like, they were very good actors because they were like, Morgan, you're so cute and not annoying at all.
I can read.
Booming. God, she's so annoying.
Anyway, so then after we have the scene with Jason and Eric where Molly calls him a vermicular miscreant. We meet Desiree, who's the one with the
she's got a Savannah, Georgia accent, even though she's from Atlanta.
She's from Atlanta. Yeah, little George Peach. I thought that they had a kind of cute meet cute, though. Eric spills juice on her, and it goes all over both of them, and they're both genuinely annoyed. Desiree's like, and Eric's like, my shoes. And Desiree's like, your shoes, my shoes. I love how I'm doing a British accent.
It's hard to do a Savannah accent.
My shoes.
My shoes. All right.
Shoes. Yeah, so she's like, your shoes, my shoes. And Eric's like, I just bought mine. And Desiree's like, I just bought mine in New York. And Eric's like, my pants. And Desiree's like, my blouse. And Eric's like, my hair. And then it turns into my. Eric's like, my, oh my. And Jason's trying to be like, bag of misery, because Eric was just saying before, like, please do not let me date another woman. Eric ignores him, obviously, and they continue.
Like a leaf.
Oh, yeah. Desiree is very pretty. She's also, like, probably 27 years old. They try to make up for that by saying she's a senior citizen. Desiree introduces herself as Desiree Emmeline Hollinger Beaumont. But you may call me Desiree. I thought that was interesting that she said her full name, because we got that scene in the earlier episode about, like, learn her name, right? Remember that scene?
Oh, yeah.
Right? So in this one, I was like, all right, we get her whole freaking name.
Yeah.
And I liked Eric's response, because she goes, Desiree Emmeline Hollinger Beaumont, but you may call me Desiree. And Eric goes, Eric Matthews, but you may call me Desiree. The way he delivered the line was really good. So Shawn and Cory have a scene next where Shawn reveals to Cory that he was disappointed that nobody realized that he was the one who changed the headline to Weenie. So he took it a step further and he changed Feeny's name on his office door. And Shawn's like, yeah, I snuck in early this morning and I changed it. Looks like the real deal, doesn't it? And it clearly looks like it was drawn on. Like, it absolutely does not look like the real deal. And Cory goes up with his finger and touches it and goes, except for this drip. Ink goes on his finger. And he's like, Shawn, you're out of control. And Shawn's like, yeah, I am. Tell your friends. And then the janitor comes over and Shawn disappears. And so the janitor points to Cory and goes, there's your man, Mr. Feeny. Cory's freaking out. He's like, Mr. Feeny, I did not paint this W. And Feeny's like, and the headline in the school newspaper? And Cory's like, it wasn't me. And Feeny's like, Mr. Matthews, our own esteemed janitor Bud placed you at the center of this crime. And everyone laughed at that. And I was like, why are you laughing at him saying our own esteemed? Is it because a janitor can't be esteemed? Because it's a funny thing to just say that? That was like crazy to me. I don't know. But then later, Shawn's dad is going to be the janitor, and I feel like they're going to kind of fix that.
Yeah.
Janitor's like, yeah, I seen him with my good eye. And Feeny's like, all right, that'll be all, Janitor Bud, thanks. And then I love this line that the janitor says. He goes through the crowd, like waving everyone away, going, out of my way, you little puke machines. And the reason that made me laugh was because I just remember that the janitor of the school would enter my sphere of reality when someone would throw up.
With the little box of like litter to throw on the
wood chips or like the wood shavings.
Yes.
That look like Bonita flakes.
Why were kids always throwing up?
They were always throwing up. It was sawdust, wasn't it? I think it was sawdust.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
To soak it up?
I would soak up the puke and then they would sweep it up. So I thought it was so funny that to him, they're all just a bunch of puke machines.
Right. That's really a lot of his job.
So Feeny basically says that the janitor saw Cory and someone else that he couldn't get a good glimpse of at the computer. You know, he knows it was him who changed the F, or at least, you know, Cory has to give up who it was if it wasn't him. And Feeny basically says, you have until the end of school tomorrow to give me the perpetrator's name. Otherwise, you will be suspended. So now Cory is in this predicament where he has to give up Shawn. Scene change. We're in the living room. Cory tries to like zoom past his parents. He's like, hey, how you both doing? He's so unnatural with them when he's hiding something. It's so funny. Dad, Mom. So Alan's like, we're doing better than you. And Amy's like, Mr. Feeny called. He told us he's meeting with you in his office tomorrow. He also said to ask you what it's about. And Cory's like, okay, look, I'm in this sort of a situation and I don't exactly know what to do. I've got this friend who's pulled a major scam at school. And I love Amy for this. She goes, Shawn. And Cory goes, not Shawn. And Amy goes, Shawn. And Cory goes, fine, Mom. Think it's Shawn because that just protects the kid it really is. Anyway, this kid did something. And Amy goes, with a newspaper headline. And Cory goes, yeah, it could be. Now, Mr. Feeny, he knows I didn't do it, but he also thinks he knows I know who did it. And Amy goes, Shawn. And Cory goes, not Shawn. And Amy goes, Shawn. And Alan goes, Amy, he says it's not Shawn. I believe him. And Cory goes, obviously it's Shawn. I love him.
Yep.
Because that would be me.
You are so the same.
I'm so because I can't. If someone like believes in me and trusts me and thinks I'm like trustworthy and honorable, I will cave immediately. I don't want you thinking I can't be trusted.
Yeah.
That breaks my heart.
Yeah.
So this is where we get a very interesting thing that I want to debate you on, or I want to like hear your opinion on.
I have thoughts. I know what you're going to
I want to hear your thoughts.
on.
So Alan says, well, I don't care who it is. A friend does not rat out a friend. What do you think about that?
So I was more interested in the banter back and forth between Amy and Alan on this. His stance was a friend does not rat out a friend. Her stance was like,
what are you, in a prison movie? There are
yeah.
consequences.
Yeah.
And Alan goes, oh, what's the worst the Feeny can do? And Cory says, well, he's threatening to suspend me. And she goes, oh, great, a big S on his permanent record?
A big red S.
A big red S?
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
even think about it.
Yeah. That was on purpose. It was unrealistic for the two of them to not take that situation into their own hands, given that he was being threatened with suspension. Maybe they weren't totally convinced that Feeny would actually do that because, you know, he's a friend and a neighbor and like he knows that that's like a really big deal to suspend somebody, and maybe they know this is Mr. Feeny's, you know, thing that he's doing to teach a lesson. He's threatening with suspension, but he might actually do it. Maybe that's the case. But that said, if the principal of the school your kid is at is threatening suspension and you know that that could get erased if you say Cory didn't do it but Shawn did, that's when the parents call Shawn's parents and say, here's the situation. Our kid is about to get suspended because he's not going to rat on Shawn. Like, you guys need to deal with this because our kid is not getting suspended.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. I think I was taking it farther than this situation. And I think of everything. Further. Thank you. Yikes. When these moments happen, I'm like, I shouldn't be teaching English. Yeah, I was taking it further because I was realizing that, or rather, I'm always thinking about everything that happens with kids in school and in these like, in the microcosm of school, I think of everything as representing what they're going to do when they're older and in like their broader society, in their community. And so what they learn in these small situations is going to be how they, you know, how they handle things when they're older. So detention is really just the kiddie version of jail, right? Yeah. And so how we approach that penal system in school is going to teach them how they need to approach potential jail time as adults, right? So if your friend commits a crime, are adults really teaching kids never rat out your friend, even if they commit a crime? Not that he committed a crime. He didn't commit a crime. And that can be addressed in the conversation with the kid, right? Like it could be like, hey, listen, they didn't commit a crime. You know, loyalty is important and whatever. But in the real world, if your friend commits a crime, I'm thinking about like sexual assault and stuff. Like if you have a guy friend, if you're a guy and you have a guy friend, that's kind of the fraternity that has kept a lot of men safe. Right? And police forces, for example, there's been a lot of protection of each other that has been really toxic and problematic. And that's why I'm like, oh, like, I don't know about teaching kids this. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's a really interesting perspective. You definitely took it way further than I did. But I do think that's important. Wavering loyalty in any sense is not good. Like blindly supporting somebody is never good. Like you should be calling out
Your friends.
your friends. And like Cory did, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, Shawn did it anyway. So there's something to be said about that too.
Yeah.
It's a little bit tricky. Because you like love your friend, you don't want them to get in trouble, and you want them, like, you don't want to cause a fight, and you want to like show that you are loyal or trying to be a good friend. But like also being a good friend is calling people out on their mistakes.
And so Amy says, what possessed Shawn to do something like this? And Cory says, I don't know. He just wanted to be someone special. So there's the third time we get the word special in the episode, and not some 7th grade nothing. And then Amy says, maybe when you get a little older and a little more mature, you'll realize that stunts and gimmicks are not what make you special. So this is part 1 of the message that then Feeny is going to give part 2 to later in his office when he meets with Cory. So then we get a funny scene where Eric walks in and he just like quickly walks through the living room and he's like, I'm dating a senior. I'm special. I am fabulous. I have a tremendous newfound sense of self-worth. And then he turns to his family and he goes, nothing bad can happen, right? And they all go, no. Oh, yeah. Because Eric has completely sacrificed who he is for a girl. So we get another scene with Harley and Joey. Desiree comes over. So now they kind of leave and Desiree and Eric enter the hallway. And Desiree's like, now after school, you can drive me down to the mall because I have no idea what anything is yet. And while I'm investigating the finest stores, you can take my new kitten that my daddy bought me and have him neutered. I'm so bad at this
That was
accent.
really good.
Who's your little Georgia Peach? And Eric's like, you are. And she's like, and who's my Yankee Doodle? And he's like, I am. And Jason's right there. Eric's like, the cat's getting neutered. And Jason's like, maybe you can make it a 2-for-1 deal, or am I too late? Eric's like, hey, this happens to be a relationship between 2 complete equals. And Desiree's like, do you know my little puff pastry? There's just a lick of winter in the air. Would you mind, before picking me up, just driving around the block for 40 minutes while the heater's on, so the inside of the car's all nice and toasty? Would you do that for me? And then Eric like hesitates, and she's like, say yes, puddin'. Eric's like, yes. Jason's like, I believe the woman wants puddin'. Jason and Eric exit. Shawn asks Cory if he wants to shoot some hoops. Cory reminds him that he has a little meeting with Feeny after school where he's basically going to get suspended. And Shawn's like, oh yeah, I totally appreciate you doing this for me. I mean, after I blew up that mailbox last year, to your point, referencing the last episode that this writer wrote, Dad said one more screw up and he'd ship me off to military school. I like that we're remembering that. I'm like, yes, good. He's a person. He has a backstory.
Yes. But now, so that's actually important then, because now there's stakes.
Exactly.
If Cory rats on his friend, he's going to no longer be at this school. That's a big deal.
It is a big deal. That should have been, just in my opinion, like dialed up a little bit.
Yeah.
Like if they spoke about that with the family on the couch, like if Alan was like, are we really going to encourage him to rat out his friend if his friend is going to be shipped off to military school?
Yeah.
Then Amy could have the point, well, what are we teaching him? Like to cover up for people who do the wrong thing? Like I kind of wish it was more like that.
Yeah,
you know?
a little, yes. A little bit more nuanced in what the right thing to do is.
Yeah. So Feeny walks by with the paper open and he's reading the new paper and he's like, weenie, 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 weenie. Turns to page 3, column 1, and weenie. Don't be late, Mr. Matthews. And Turner says, go easy on him, George. They're at a new school. And Feeny says, as am I, Turner. As am I. This was good writing. And with Feeny also going into Turner's classroom earlier and kind of making that comment about him teaching them about the letter A, it gave Turner a motivation to have a one-on-one with Cory. Because Turner is one of those characters that he's so cool that it also would be a little unbelievable for him to like check in and care. Like I feel like he's the guy that's like, I gotta get on my motorcycle and get the hell out of here. So I liked that they gave him motivation, and by showing us that Feeny's A, kind of undermining him, so he needs to prove himself a little bit, and B, with this moment, Turner's like, okay, I need to maybe
see it. Yeah,
now I have something to say. So we're in the classroom. Turner's explaining. So in the end, Hester Prynne is faced with a pretty tough decision, huh? Does she rat on the person who's responsible for her predicament, or does she keep his secret and face the scorn of society? No, it's honestly Dimsdale who has to kind of figure out if he wants to tell everyone. And eventually he does, actually. At the end, there's a really dramatic scene where he like finally reveals to everyone that he's the father, and then he dies, literally drops dead. Turner goes, pretty relevant stuff, eh, Mr. Matthews? Eh, Hunter? So it was definitely like tweaked and contrived to make it fit their situation. So Shawn's asleep. And when he goes, hey, Hunter, Shawn wakes up when he hears his name and just goes, sir, it stood for adultery, sir.
Oh, I just realized that he's doing that because he's dreaming about military school.
Exactly. And he's obviously gone back in time to the first class where they were learning about the letter A. And then the bell rings, and then Turner has his one-on-one with Cory, and he asks Cory to hang back. And Cory starts talking to Turner like he's the cool teacher that totally understands, which I think is realistic. Cory's like, he's going so psycho over this, don't you think? And Turner's like, I think when you're at a new school like you and me, first impressions really stick. They decide your reputation. What if tomorrow you raised your hand and I said, what do you want, booger? Cory's like, would you do that? And Turner's like, it'd probably follow you all through high school, maybe all your life. People would call you booger. Cory's like, you didn't hear my question. Would you do that? And Turner's like, I'm a teacher. I can do whatever I want. I wield the power to inform and to influence. So do people who make funny newspaper headlines about the principal who's new in school, like you and me. Cory's like, so you're saying I should squeal on my friend? And Turner says, no, I'm not. So all the adults, all the male adults, except for Feeny, seem to be like, don't ever rat on your friend. Like bro code kind of thing. Mm. And then Cory's like, so I should cover for him. But then Turner says, I'm not saying that either. So then Cory goes, so what are you saying? And Turner says, I was hoping you'd know. Which I thought was like real. I like when adults are real in this series.
Yeah, because it is a little like, I don't know what he should do in this situation either. Yeah. It's complex.
Yeah. I think what he ends up doing is exactly the right thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, especially knowing that it works out for everybody.
Yeah. Well, he takes detention. He does. Yeah. And it saves his friend. He was willing
to take suspension, though. Luckily, it worked out for him. It wasn't suspension, but like, what if it was? That sucks.
There is something noble about it. So then Cory enters Feeny's office. And this is where we're going to get like the wrap up of the message about being special. Cory's like, listen, about the headline and all. Well, I'm sorry for what happened. Must have hurt being called, you know. And Feeny goes, wasn't as if I'd never heard it before. It was practically my nickname growing up. That's not to leave this room. And Cory goes, I guess it's more of a big deal than I thought. And Feeny says, as principal of this school, I'm expected to keep order. Unchecked, these pranks undermine my authority and breed disrespect. And Cory says, so I guess I get punished for something I didn't do. And Feeny says, name the person who did, and you walk out of here scot-free. And Cory says, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And Feeny says, you thought about this, and that's your final decision? Cory says, yeah. Feeny says, you've decided that protecting a friendship is more important than the grisly punishment I shall now dispense. Cory says, Mr. Feeny, he didn't mean to hurt anyone. He just wanted to do something that would make him somebody special. There it is again. Feeny. To be somebody special is a quality from within, Mr. Matthews. To give you an example, I think it's a very rare quality for you to put a friend's welfare before your own. Cory's like, but just a second ago, you wanted me to rat him out. And Feeny says, as the new principal, yes, but as your teacher, as someone who lived next door and watched you grow up, I never expected it for a moment.
Tear. With this little string music.
And episode wraps up really quickly. He basically says you get detention for 5 days, one for every letter in the word weenie. And then Shawn's hanging out outside the door, and then he kind of raises his voice and now is talking to Shawn, and he's like, which in this case should probably be spelled Weenie, shouldn't it, Mr. Hunter? And then Shawn's like, you told him? And Cory goes, what do you think? I like that we get that repeat. And Shawn's like, I think you wouldn't. I'm an idiot. And Feeny goes, he refused to rat you out, Mr. Hunter, and he now faces a week of detention in your honor. But the punishment for not being caught, Mr. Hunter, is far, far worse. And now Shawn's like, I did it, Mr. Feeny.
For worse.
Good one. And Shawn's like, I did it, Mr. Feeny, I confess. And Feeny's like, I will be watching you every moment of your high school career, which in your case could be decades. Shawn's like, but I just confessed. And Feeny's like, too late, Mr. Hunter, you're my new special friend. And the last line of the episode is, why didn't you turn me in? And that concludes the episode. So the message is Amy saying, gimmicks don't make you special, and Feeny wrapping it up with, what makes you special is a quality from within.
I kind of knew that Cory was never in any real danger, which kind of speaks to Alan and Amy not taking this as seriously as maybe other parents would.
You said, I think in the first episode, that Cory was special and that Feeny sees that Cory's special. Mm-hmm. So the fact that that word is used in this episode explicitly, and Feeny explicitly kind of says that Cory is special because he has a quality within himself that is special, I find that really poetic. Mm. It's just confirming what we've already been saying for this whole season, that Cory is special because he's honest and true and real and authentic and unwavering, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is at least the second time that Cory has unwaveringly defended his friend Shawn.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if the writers are going to kind of set this up to have like a big fight between the two of them, because I can only imagine after a certain point, Cory will be fed up and be like, what, how are you proving your friendship with me? Because Cory is like unrelentingly loyal and has done so much for him, and I haven't seen the same from Shawn. And if Shawn is as important a character as the writers are making him to be, he needs to step up. And I wonder if the writers are kind of setting us up for that to happen.
You're so right. Nothing comes to mind in terms of like a big climactic moment like that, but you're so right. Because Cory does say to him in this episode, this is never going to happen again, right? So you're right. That's a seed planted for us. Like, now if Shawn does it again, Cory's going to be at his wit's end because he can't do this forever. Yeah. Good point.
It's hard for me to come up with a takeaway that I have for this episode.
I guess my takeaway is just that I'm going to definitely stick to my law-abiding instincts and keep holding kids accountable, because I do believe that it's important for them to learn that there are boundaries that we've set in our society, and that school is a place to experiment with what happens when you cross those boundaries.
You guys are like literally raising kids to be humans in society. Every day they exist is an opportunity for them to learn how to be a good law-abiding citizen who like has an impact on the world.
I agree. If you look at like old videos that teachers used to show students in public school, like those old propaganda films, they were teaching kids how to handle conflicts that would come up in their communities. Mr. Johnson has a fence, you know, and Mr. Roper wants to cut down a tree that's going over his fence, and what should they do about it? And you'd like talk in school about how you would handle that. And like, that's what school probably should be. It should just be about like conflict resolution and how to live in a society and what you're going to need to do as an adult living in a community with other people that don't think and feel the way that you do about things, but you have to somehow come to some common ground, and learning about, you know, the legal system and local laws. Anyway. All right, that concludes the episode. Thank you guys so much for listening. Rate and review us. Follow us at Boy Meets Wine Podcast on Instagram. We're working on a TikTok. The name of the wine we had today was Porter and Plot Cabernet Sauvignon. Theme song credit goes to Julia Rosa. And next week's episode is Season 2, Episode 4, Me and Mr. Jode. Cory is inspired by a book to fight for his rights as a student. Bye!
Bye!